You're listening to Soap Dirt, the latest in television entertainment news.
Hey, General Hospital fans, since Drew now knows that Portia's husband is plotting to humiliate him and ruin his reputation and his career with lies, is Drew going to hit them preemptively? Is Portia about to be arrested for the ketamine caper? It's Belinda from Soap Dirt, and we're going to talk about how Drew might expose Portia's crimes and have her arrested for hiring Jacinda and providing her the drugs that led to that wild night of debauchery that was caught on video. But first, please click subscribe if you're not already following us. And just by the way, Michael is on board with Curtis's scheme against Drew, and those two are playing a long game. Michael even encouraged Curtis to play ball, cooperate, act like he's giving in to Drew's demands to run that negative piece about the custody verdict. Meanwhile, Curtis is trying to protect Portia and end Drew's blackmail and stop his control over his wife once and for all. So the plan was to find Jacinda the hooker and pay her to lie and say that Congressman Cutthroat got the ketamine himself and was using it recreationally and wanted to do some wild partying while his girlfriend Willow was out of town. Curtis will no doubt splash Jacinda's false story all over the media and destroy Drew's life or get it into the local tabloid, even if he doesn't want to do it with Aurora. So right now, Curtis has private investigator Felicia Scorpio searching for the prostitute. They've got a lead on Jacinda, and Felicia is very close to finding her in Sydney, Australia. But the huge problem is that Portia and Curtis were not careful when they were plotting and scheming and talking about their big plan to wreck Drew because Kai overheard everything. And when Cody lied and said he left the ketamine in Tracy's car, at the press conference, Drew couldn't speak up and say, oh, Cody's lying because, he planted it himself. He really couldn't defend against it because he was trying to set her up. And then, of course, even worse, Tracy ripped Drew a new one in public, and he was so despondent afterwards when he was talking to Kai. And I mean, let's face it, Drew's a monster, but for some reason, he has really been good to Kai. Even bad people have puppies. So when Drew claimed that everybody was against him and Willow, Kai felt bad because Drew's been so nice to him, and he warned him what Curtis and Portia are planning with Jacinda. And no, I'm not comparing Kai to a puppy. I'm just saying that bad people, have puppies and kittens and pets and kids, and they're nice to them while they're awful to everybody else. And that's Drew. So because of what Kai told him, now Drew has time to prepare. He knows what his enemies are plotting thanks to Kai. And of course, Drew, shocked and probably furious, but also very grateful to Kai because he forewarned him. Now, Drew just needs to find a way to get out in front of this, and he might be ready to just throw Portia to the wolves. One problem, though, is Portia had a co-conspirator, Nina Reeves, who is also a good friend of Curtis and about to be Drew's mother-in-law and his former bed buddy. So it seems like if Drew pressed charges on Portia, then that would expose Nina's involvement as well. Brad could show up and be Drew's witness, but remember, Brad only dealt with Portia. So there is a way that Drew could target just Portia, have just her arrested, and force Nina to back up whatever story that he tells to the cops and to the media. So all Drew has to do is tell Nina that if he goes to Willow with all this info about the hooker and the ketamine that absolutely humiliated Willow and really upset her, she'll probably never talk to her mom, Nina, again. And I think Drew's right when and if he says this to Nina. Willow would be absolutely furious with her mom and, probably would cut her out of her life. So Drew may hold Nina's feet to the fire and get her to turn on Portia if she doesn't want to lose Willow. He could force Nina to talk to Jacinda, to pay her more than Curtis offered, and have her put all the blame on Portia. So we could see Jacinda coming back to town, and Curtis and Portia think they're going to get this big win, but then Jacinda accuses Portia of paying her and providing her the ketamine and just leaving Nina completely out of it. And if Portia tries to say Nina was part of it, Jacinda can deny it, and Drew can say that Portia's grasping at straws. Now, obviously, Nina wouldn't want to turn on Portia and would feel horrible because Curtis is one of her best friends. But Nina is more terrified to lose her daughter Willow than to lose one of her friends. So Nina may think she has no choice but to do this for Drew if this is what he pulls. He can promise to keep on keeping her dirty secrets, and she can stay in Willow's life unless she crosses him. Now, Carly thinks she knows what happened, but honestly, she's assuming that Nina was the one to drug him. She has no hard proof. So I'm not worried too much about her coming in and trying to defend Portia because she doesn't have any actual information or evidence. And Drew can always pay Brad to come back and testify against Portia and say that she even made him take the ketamine. So, if Drew gets the hooker and the shady lab tech to both say that he was targeted by Portia, she'd go to jail for that alone. And then there's also still Portia tampering with Heather Weber's test results. So honestly, Drew's got everything he needs to ruin Portia's life, send her to prison, and take her medical license. Drew could do all that, or he could sit down with sit down with Curtis and Portia and tell them, look, I've got my finger on the button that can trigger this nuclear bombshell that will rip your family apart, ruin Portia's career, send her to prison. And Drew can tell them, look, I can push this button. I can take the nuclear option if you keep pushing me. Or he can tell Curtis and Portia, stop playing games, back off. Stop it completely. And that does seem more like Drew's style because he's been sitting on a lot of information for a while, kind of makes him a perfect sleazy politician. But then again, maybe Drew's had enough of people plotting against him. And by the way, I do think he deserves all the bad things that have come his way and that are coming this way, for cheating with Willow, how he's treated Jason and others, for saving Cyrus's life in prison. Drew deserves some karma. However, right now he's got the upper hand thanks to Kai. And speaking of the former football player, Trina's going to be devastated when she finds out Kai warned Drew about what Portia and Curtis were planning. And this could come around to bite Kai. I don't know if Trina could get past that, especially if Portia and Curtis won't play ball and her mom winds up arrested. This could be the end for Kai and Trina if Drew press charges on Portia. So we'll see. I don't think Kai knows just how bad the fallout could be for Portia and for him by giving this info to Drew. Kai's a nice guy who thinks Drew's getting trouble he doesn't deserve. But let's also be honest, as bad as Drew is, Portia has done all this to herself, like she always does. She's a liar and a schemer and has been for a long time. Jordan pointed that out just before Portia threw a drink in Jordan's face at the pool. I understand that Portia wanted to protect Trina from Heather. That makes sense, but that's not her only lies and misdeeds. And the ketamine thing was pretty sketchy. So we'll see how it plays out. That info from Kai is absolutely invaluable to Drew, and I'm sure he will reward him, but Trina's probably going to punish Kai when she finds out he blabbed. So will Drew destroy Portia and have her arrested because he doesn't think she and Curtis will ever stop? Or will Drew give Portia and Curtis one last chance? This could be the end of the line for Portia, and she may lose everything, including Curtis.
Thank you for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, because you don't want to miss the next episode. Soap Dirt is on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.